My name's Chuck Green. I'm assistant head of school and acting director of admissions. And I want to welcome everybody to our college counseling webinar. Um, Today we want to spend about 40 minutes talking a bit about what college counseling feels like at Fountain Valley. Not every independent school, not every boarding school approaches it in the same way, and we tend to approach it in a way that feels very consistent with who we are as an institution. But I'm not the expert here today. I'm really just the MC. Instead, I have three panelists that I'd like to introduce briefly. And after I introduce them, we're going to have our director of college counseling talk for a bit about what the process feels like at Fountain Valley. We'll answer a few questions with a current student who's going through and finalizing the process and a recent graduate. And then we have taken some questions from the audience and we'll go through answering those. And then I'll go ahead and do a little close. But first and foremost, let me introduce the head of our college counseling office, Jeff Kurtzman. He has been here at the school now, I think 18 months. I think we started at the same time with a long career of almost 30 years in college counseling. As in addition to Jeff Kurtzman, we have our current senior, Lily Christofferson, who's going to offer great insight into how the process feels today. Going through college counseling. And I'd like to introduce a recent graduate and current Texas A&M student, Mason Burnett, who has come back to help us talk about this process. But at this point, I think I'm going to just go ahead and let Jeff Kurtzman talk about his philosophy and the approach that we're using at Fountain Valley. Jeff, it's all you.
Thanks, Chuck. Glad to be here with everybody. Let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Oh, I need to send a request. We'll try that. Maybe while that request is coming through. Nope, it looks like I can now. Let's see. Yay. Okay. Let's see if we can figure out how to make this work. Open system settings. Yeah, okay. Good. Good. Quit and reopen. I'm not going to do that. All right. Well, we may not have slides then. That is totally fine. I can just talk. That's fine. A couple things I wanted to say. I do have to correct Chuck. I have not been doing college counseling for 30 years, about 15, maybe a little bit more. I started out my career in independent schools, teaching eighth grade history and coaching baseball and bowling, all of those great preparation for a career in college counseling. But I got the chance to switch over and give this a try, and it's just something that I really love. I was at my previous school for a long time, and like many people, I had my eye on the Rocky Mountains and hiking and fishing and things like that. But there are a lot of schools out this way, and it took a good while for me to find one that I was really excited about coming to, and I'm so glad to be at Fountain Valley. And one of the reasons it took so long is because college counseling can be, I think, either the best job at a school or the worst, depending on the situation. And so I wanted to make sure that this was going to be a really good place to do this job. And I think it's a good place to do it when it's a good place for students to go through the college counseling process. And so glad to say that my instincts were right. This is a really good place for students to go through the college search process. And I am not going to sit here and take credit for that. I think there are hundreds of people involved in creating that environment: students, parents, faculty, administrators, board of trustees. It's really a group effort. And so I'm just glad to be a part of that. So if I was to have my screen up, I would have about 5 or 6 of our kind of college counseling principles that we go by, which I think describe how we do things here at Fountain Valley in terms of the college search. Number 1 on the list is that we believe 100% in helping students find the right fit for them. And I think you'd find most high schools will say that. But what makes it possible to really do that is the environment that's been established. Um, our college counseling office, which consists of me and Dr. Jamie Green, who is the other counselor, and our administrative assistant, Vicki Foster. We are together under no pressure from the head of school, from the board, to create some artificial list of colleges. There's no pressure to do that. We are 100% able to focus on helping students find the right fit for them. And that's really important. That is not the case at many high schools. And so we think that's really important in terms of putting students and families at the center of the process. Speaking of that, number two, the other thing that I think we're skilled at, and which I'm really proud that we do, is we put the student in charge of the process, and we make sure that they are taking charge of the process. And you might, depending on how old your potential student is, you might be thinking like, I don't really see that happening. But all those years of experience, I can tell you that is the way that it should work. And there's several reasons for that. Number one is that's how students are going to get to the college that's right for them, not what I think or parents think or cousin Judy thinks, but who the student is. That's the person who should be helping to find or leading the charge to find the right college. Second reason is there's just so much to be learned from the college search itself. Uh, Students are acquiring skills every single day: how to write emails, how to um, set deadlines and meet them, how to call somebody that they don't know. These are all things that they're going to need to know how to do when we're not there, when they're in college. And so those are I think the main reasons. I think the third reason is if you're in charge of your own college search process, if you in a sense get yourself there, then when you have that rough day freshman year or whenever it happens that we all had who've been to college, you're able to say, no, I do belong here. I got myself here and I can get through this thing. It's a big confidence booster. So that's, I think, a really important feature, and something that we feel really proud about. Number three, I would say, is that our process is very personalized. We have about 60 students per grade. We have the 2 counselors for us. That's a very manageable workload. So we are able to get to know them and to get to know families really well, to understand all the situations. Students can come to our office as much as they want. We will never say you've reached your quota. We will never say we're too busy for you. It's very personalized, and that allows the search that they have to be the one that's right for them, and not a one size fits all that you might get at a larger place. I can tell you, as a graduate of a large public university or a large public high school, I do not know if there was a college counselor. I never talked to anybody. Um, I do not know what they would have written about me in a recommendation other than Jeff has not been arrested. That's about what they knew. We will know a lot more than that. And so we are able to write really detailed and helpful recommendations that colleges, will say, this really helped us to get to know students. Number four, this is really important as well. We serve a wide range of aspirations and financial situations. So we have students who are applying to and getting admitted to the most selective colleges in the country. We have students applying to and getting admitted to service academies, liberal arts colleges, public universities, in-state and out-of-state art schools, any kind of institution you can think of, any state, other countries, all over the place, any kind of search, we can do that. And because Fountain Valley is such a diverse and interesting place, and our students are from so many different places and have so many different goals and experiences, what it does is it just makes sure that everybody can go to where they think is the right place for them. There is not the pressure to all cram into a few of the same places, which I think makes for a really healthy college going experience. So last year we had, I think, 58 seniors, and they went to 45 different colleges. That to me says they're going where they need to go, and they feel good and celebrated about doing that. Going along with that, I think that helps us to model a sort of calm and collaborative approach to this process. At a lot of places, it's very stressful. Students are competitive with each other. There's infighting and backbiting. We don't have any of that. Students are looking at all different places. They celebrate each other's triumphs, and we're able to keep, for the most part, the stress to a reasonable level. Obviously, students, if they wait till the last second, that can increase the levels a little bit, but that's part of the learning experience that we work with them on. And then the last thing I would say is we all get along. Students, faculty, administrators, parents, counselors. This is a process where we realize we're all on the same team. And that is definitely not the case at a lot of other schools where, there's things that you read about with all kinds of craziness that's happening. I can say with complete honesty, in the year and a half, almost 2 years that I've been here, I have not received any angry phone calls, nor have I called anyone in an angry way. So that's something that I think is a really wonderful part of our process. There are a couple other things on the slides as far as some advice, depending on how old your student is currently. Just a couple quick things that I might mention as far as what students can be doing earlier. We really believe at Fountain Valley that applying to college is not a 4-year experience, that the high school experience in and of itself is really valuable and should be held sacrosanct. And so what we tell underclassmen, 9th and 10th graders, is that there are 3 main things that students can be doing during that time. And if they do those things, which are really making the most of your high school or Fountain Valley school experience, then you'll be in great shape to apply to college when the time comes. The first is to challenge yourself in your classes and do the best that you can in those classes and start figuring out what are the academic subjects that really animate you. If you do those things, that's going to be the most important thing that colleges are looking for. Number 2 is get involved in extracurricular activities. It is not about the quantity, it's about the quality. So experiment, find a few things, see what things you like, and then really dive deeply into those things. That's what colleges eventually will be looking for, is students who have figured out some things that really interest them that they may or may not bring to their campus, but they're the type of people that get involved and that they take their passions to heart. And I think coincidentally, that's also the healthy way of approaching things rather than trying to fill every slot on an application. And then number 3, get to know your teachers and coaches and the adults that are at your school and in your life. Those are really great people who will eventually serve as recommenders, mentors, and obviously that can help in the college process as well. So that's kind of most of what would have been on the slides. And I will also I will put in the chat, if I'm allowed to, I think I am, a link to our college counseling handbook, which is basically 25 pages of everything that we know. It is a pretty good introduction to the college search, whether you're at Fountain Valley or somewhere else. It's also really great if you're having trouble falling asleep. Open that thing up and you'll be knocked out cold. So thank you for being here, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to chat with you. Oh, you're muted, Chuck. Need to unmute.
Thank you, Jeff. I apologize for making you a 60-year-old man with a 30-year-old college counseling career. But yeah, I really do love hearing this about college counseling every time I've been here with you. I think it really is part and parcel of what makes Fountain Valley special. This idea that we have to allow and facilitate students going on their own journey, and that's part of the education process, and that college counseling is sort of the culmination of that education process and that discovery process here at Fountain Valley. So thank you. Next up, I think a current student, Lily Christopherson, is going to take an opportunity to just talk a little bit about their process just for a couple minutes, and then we'll get to, actually, I think maybe the best way to handle this is to go directly to some of our questions, because I think they're directed at Lily and Mason. You guys all set? All right. Well, the first question is, how did you start your college search process?
So My start was a little bit different to maybe what would the traditional start would be because, I'm playing soccer in college, so I started looking at colleges, like, basically at in the middle of sophomore year is when I sort of made my list of places that I was interested in, and that was my first sort of criteria for looking through was location, so I knew that I didn't wanna go to, like, the Southeast, so I just basically took that all off the table, for example. I know. Um, so, like, location and then major was the second biggest thing that I looked at. I kind of, was looking to do a niche major, and so I wanted to make sure that all the schools on my list had the major that I wanted and, like, had a good school in that. Um from there, I think my first involvement with the Fountain Valley College Counseling process, uh, started we start in junior year with just talking about in the summer, what things can we be doing? How can we, start maybe make a Common App account or start making your list, start looking into things you like. Um, and so I'd say that is the first step is just sort of making a very broad list and then going from there.
Awesome, thank you. Mason.
Yeah, hi. I'm Mason Burdett. I'm a current junior at Texas A&M University, studying nuclear engineering, and I graduated Fountain Valley in 2022. So I'm a little bit removed from the college search process, but I definitely do remember it. So I think I kind of started out looking at kind of bigger schools. Fountain Valley is a small high school, and that was very rewarding for me. It fostered some of the most genuine relationships I've ever had in my life at that school, and that was due to that small setting. But when I started the college search process, I kind of um, was seeking something bigger, somewhere where I could, I don't know, just there's more people, there's more things to do, that sort of thing. And so I just kind of started looking at kind of the big public state schools, and of course I'm from Texas, so the public schools in Texas were kind of at the top of my list, and so that was my kind of first criteria, is I was looking for a larger school. Um, I also kind of wanted to look at schools that had strong engineering and business programs. I knew that I was going to trend in that direction, whether it go business or engineering. I knew it was going to be one of those two. So schools that had both programs, that was great. Schools that had really strong in one or really strong in the other, that was great. And so that was kind of my second list on the criteria. And then another really important thing for me was that the school had a hockey team, whether that be NCAA or club. I was looking to play college hockey in some capacity. And so any school that was on the list that didn't have a team got crossed off my list. So that's kind of how I started the approach, is I knew I wanted to go to a big school. I knew I wanted to study engineering or business, and I knew I wanted to play hockey. And so that was kind of the three main factors that went into my decision making for the first kind of large list. Like Lily said, there's a lot of narrowing down, but that first list, those were the three bullets for me.
That's great. I wonder if you guys could think a little bit about what particular resources at FES felt most helpful in the search.
I would say I found it most helpful, like definitely like starting to narrow down my list, just really using mostly Mr. Kurtzman, I would say, is like just chatting through with him, like, okay, you've been here. Like, what things do you like and don't like about this school? Why? Do you think I'd be a good fit there, et cetera, et cetera. So I think just having that resource of like somebody that you can talk to was so important. Like, definitely at the big public school that I went to before Found Valley, like that was not going to be a thing. That was not going to be a resource that I had to talk to someone that had been to a lot of the places that were on my list. So that was really important for me.
I think probably, leaning on the college counselors, of course, that's the resource. But I think the biggest way that I was helped was kind of figuring out what is a safety and what is a reach. I think you can kind of have a little bit of a big head when you're a senior, applying to some of these colleges that are a little bit, at least for me, right? I had a lot of colleges on my first list, and I had to go in, and I kind of had a lot of green highlights where I might have needed to have a bit more orange and a bit more red. And so going to the college counselors and kind of understanding, getting a better understanding of where I was. There's I think I don't remember what software we were using at the time, but basically that put you you were a dot on this big spread, and it kind of matched you up against where other applicants from your school and just the nation were at. And so seeing that was a very valuable resource for me to kind of understand where I stood in my application at different universities. Um, I also think that, like Lily said, just narrowing down the schools. So, of course, I had these kind of three main things that I was looking at, but I think what the college counseling office helped me do is look in the right direction in terms of where I could research more on the programs that they had. Understand, not every business program is the same, not every engineering program is the same. So, what aspects do I like in this school, in this college? What sort of what do they specialize in? Are they doing, specifically one type of engineering, or do they have a very broad range? What sort of professors are doing what type of research there? That sort of thing was very helpful, and I got that through the college counseling office. The resources that they have were extensive back when I was in high school, and I'm sure that's evolved even further now. But just leaning on them to help narrow down and understand where I kind of lay in the process.
So, my next question is probably a Lily specific question. It's, how are you currently balancing sort of the academics with the athletic recruitment process?
That's a good question. So I play travel club soccer, which is a big commitment, especially in the fall. So that practice is 4 days a week. Normally we have games on Saturday and Sunday, and we travel at least 4 or 5 times throughout the from maybe August or September to through February. So that has been an interesting sort of like process to balance because I am very committed to my sport and I want to be there for everything. And also, Fountain Valley is a very academically rigorous school, and it's something that is hard to miss classes, and it's not ideal. I think for me, the biggest thing that has helped balancing is staying on top of my academics so that when I do have trips and stuff, I'm already ahead before I even leave. So now this year with our new schedule, it's a little bit different, but I almost always try to have my homework done 2 days in advance so that I am ahead. And on the weekends, I'm doing the homework for Monday, maybe on Thursday instead of Sunday night, so that I have a little bit more time during the weekend to focus on my athletics, and the weekdays are maybe more focused on my academics.
So I love the forethought and planning you put into all of this, and I wish I had been able to do the same when I was your age. That's just it's really outstanding. I wonder, and you sort of just leaned into this, but I wonder if both you and Mason could sort of think about what advice you would give to current students as they're going to be heading into the college process, or even thinking about picking schools and how they might be differently approaching the college process.
Yeah, I can go here. I think for me, it's a lot of research. Like Mr. Kurtzman said, like you kind of put it in the hands of the student. You're leading your own process, and so it's on you to really look into these schools, right? Don't just go on US News. Don't just look at the ranking. Don't just look at what party school is going to be the best parties, right? You need to really look at it, because the 4 years, 5 years, however long you spend in college, those are some of the most formative years of your life. And you're living there, you're making friends there, you might meet your partner there. It's a very important part of your life, and it's not just the ranking of your college or university or specific program that you're in. It's really, like I said, the formative part, foundational pieces of your life. And you need to look into all of those aspects. I think I would encourage current students to look at what living is like, look at what the culture is like, look at what extracurricular activities they have, what's near the college. Do you want to go to a school that is that has 2,000 people in a forest in New Hampshire, which is great? Or do you want to go to a school in a city? Those are things that are important to consider. And I think taking a look at that early on in the process is important, and it can really help you find the right place for you. And I think oftentimes people get clouded by just the rankings. People get clouded by just the particular programs. And I think you got to look a little bit more bigger picture, because you can go somewhere, great ranking, and you can be really unhappy there. And that's not the goal of the college admission process. The goal is to set yourself up for a great future. And that doesn't necessarily always have to do with the numbers.
Lily, I see you nodding your head in agreement, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the advice I would give is along the same lines of we're not focused on the rankings, like be open to everywhere. The school that I'm going to, I didn't know existed before the summer between my sophomore and junior year. So I think that it's really important to be open and be on the lookout and don't be super focused on name brand or maybe like, oh, I've heard that this place has a top 10 whatever. Like that is not the most important thing. So I would say be open to all of your options anywhere, as long as you think it's going to be a good fit for you.
Great. So Mason, I'm put you on the spot a little bit. So how did FBS prepare you for those first moments at college and your college experience?
I think one of the biggest things that I noticed between me and some of my peers, my freshman year, was just kind of the study habits that I had. I think kind of the transition into college for a lot of people who kind of weren't kind of conditioned to sit down and allocate time every day to get work done. Um, there's a big gap there. So when I came in, I mean, we had study hall for 2, 3, 4 hours a night every night when I was in school, and that just kind of it was like a clock. It was just part of my day to get my work done. And that was really helpful coming in as a freshman in college. A lot of my peers didn't have that, and it reflected in their grades. And I think so. The study habits was a big part. I think just being around driven people. I think Fountain Valley is a place that attracts driven, motivated people, and being in a cohort of people who are driven and motivated, it makes you more driven and motivated. And um, those are important attributes to have, especially when you're first getting into college, because it can be a little bit daunting. It can be hard. The classes are more difficult, and you need to have the perseverance that I feel like I got from Fountain Valley to keep going. And then additionally, just courses that challenged me academically. I think the Fountain Valley experience, I came in as a sophomore. I did 3 years at Fountain Valley. I spent my freshman year at home in Houston in a public school with 5,000 kids. And I think the courses that I took at Fountain Valley, the workload, the way the teachers structured the classes were very similar to how my college courses are structured. They were similar to the rigor and similar expectations, and all of that really helped me transition, and it translated to college. And I still reflect on those times, and I think about some of the strategies that I learned at Fountain Valley in my everyday life, even 3 years into college. So I definitely felt very prepared and very grateful for the experience I had.
Thank you. I think that both you and Lily have sort of alluded to that idea of, the strategies of how to approach just getting your work done in a timely fashion, and how to be planful and mindful about your day, your week, and the upcoming months, given the expectations around time. So I'm glad the school has been able to be a part of that for you. Um, our next set of questions are questions we have sort of pulled from the audience over time, and this first one also includes you, Mr. Kurtzman, as a potential person to answer. Um, and it's, what makes college counseling at FVS unique?
I can take a stab at that one if you want. I mean, unique is a pretty tough word, because that implies there's nowhere else like it. But I can tell you, there are not many places, judging from the fact that every time I go to a conference with other college counselors and hear them talk about how things are at their schools, I'm always really grateful that I work here. And that was true at my previous school too, but I don't know that there's too many places. I think one of the things that makes, if I could go with unique at Fountain Valley, is that we do have um, the student body and the resources that are going to, you know, all different types of colleges, and including the most selective, including local public universities, all kinds of places. And all of those are, I think, equally celebrated. I think to find schools that are able to do that is pretty rare. Um, and to have a school that has the resources to have experienced college counseling and to send them to conferences and to send us to visit schools, and yet keep things relatively calm and um, relatively uh, nice for everyone. I think that those combinations of things, that's pretty unique.
Yeah, and I think Lily and Mason would agree on this. The idea around equally celebrating. I think that's one of the first things I sort of noticed about Fountain Valley, that is not just about the college counseling process, but really is about everyone's experience. And what it means to be part of the community is that the kids here, the faculty here, they celebrate everyone's journey equally, right? And are happy for having all of us here together, doing all of this work together, and that it extends to the college counseling process as well. I guess the next question again may also be mostly a Mr. Kurtzman question, but um, if you think about sort of what FVS does to support students in finding the right college fit, what does that sort of specific process feel like? Because and you mentioned it before, every school likes to say it, right? But I imagine there's a part about this that has to be tied to students and their own journey.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I do think there's a couple components to it. I mean, one of them does speak to the fact that in our office, we are able to say whatever we think is right for helping students and families find the right fit. We're not in the back of our mind thinking, well, I'd really like to get this kid to go to Vanderbilt or something like that. We don't have to think about those things. We're not under that pressure. I know other people are at other schools. But I think the other part is, as you were talking about, students at Fountain Valley are used to taking charge of their own education and to a large degree developing their own interests, developing their own direction. And so it comes naturally that they would want to take charge of figuring out what that looks like for them. And so when I talk to students, they have a much better sense of themselves than I think a lot of other high school students do, because they've had that experience and that freedom and independence to do that. And so they know what animates them. They know what works well for them. They know what their interests are. And so then they can add on to that self-knowledge with some of the diagnostic tools, the Myers-Briggs test and other personality tests that help you figure out each side of that equation. And so one side is helping students get to know themselves better, which can be a great benefit to the college search process. And then the equal sign, and then colleges. And I think to some extent, that's where we as counselors can come in terms of helping them get to know colleges, giving them research techniques and resources, and then giving them the time and the space, and creating that time and space from outside pressures to do that research and to do that thinking on their own time, on their own schedule. I think that's one of the things that if you're going to be a good college counselor, is you can't be expecting all students to do everything at the same time. And you have to give them the freedom to do it when they're ready to do it. And that includes writing essays. And so does that mean you're putting up with some things being done at not exactly the same time that I would do it? Sure. But that's why you get paid to do it, to put up with, the fact that students are going to do it on their own time, and to welcome that as part of the process.
All right, I'm actually going to take a question from one of our viewers. And the question is specifically for the college counselor. Could you name 5 colleges that you really like right now maybe things that you would call your college crushes, so to speak?
Oh, that's such a fun question, at least for me. I mean, the one thing about being a college counselor, especially as you do it longer, is you realize that it's not really about your favorites because it's not about you. And so when I go to visit colleges, I have learned that my job is not to see what I like, but to think about it, who would like this? Who is this the right school for? Who would like this? So, but I'm not going to avoid the question because that wouldn't be very fun. Um, Oh, one of my favorite colleges just closed, unfortunately, which was Quest University in Canada, which was a really interesting new college, relatively, that tried to establish a liberal arts tradition in Canada, which they don't really have. They have great schools, but they're larger for the most part. And Quest University had an amazing campus, like looking at the mountains near Whistler. But more importantly than that, like they'd gotten rid of all departments. It was all interdisciplinary, and every student had what they called a question that they answered. And so they self-developed their own major and answered this question in a sort of thesis as part of their experience. So I just thought that was really cool taking, and they also were on the block plan. So Colorado College right here in Colorado Springs, that would be on my crush list, I guess, because I do like the block plan, taking one course at a time, and some of the creativity that you can do as a result. Like if you're taking a course on expatriate American writers after World War I, the class meets in Paris because that's where those writers were. That's pretty cool. I do love colleges, just me personally, with open curriculums like Grinnell College in Iowa, um, Vassar, Amherst, Brown, Rochester. There's a few because I love the idea that every class that a student is in, they want to be in. To me, that's pretty cool. Oh, where else do I like? I went to New Mexico State last year, first time I'd ever been there, and it was awesome. Just I've never seen such a well-run, organized, friendly campus, and Las Cruces was just a cool town in the desert with mountains around it. What is? I have one left. Uh, I think Emerson College in Boston is really cool. It's a whole college based on the idea of communication, and they define that broadly. You can major in things like political communication, you can major in advertising, you can major in comedy, you can major in musical theater. Um, and it has a bunch of fairly famous alumni, maybe more in the 70s and 80s, like Jay Leno and the Fonz. They went there. But I just love the idea of a whole college built on people trying to tell stories and people trying to communicate in all kinds of different ways.
Those are great. I'm looking at the clock and I'll be mindful of time. The last question I was really preparing to ask you was if you could share a college success story. And as I ask it, I realize it's a bit of a trick question because I think you would consider anytime a kid ends up at a school that's a good fit, it's a college success story. But maybe there's a particular one that comes to mind.
I mean, I can think of one from last year who, this was a really bright kid who, probably could have just kind of scattershot applied to a bunch of really selective places and probably could have gotten into some. But he was also a really interesting kid who did a lot of livestock raising and was, in fact, the 4-H Club livestock trivia champion of Colorado and had the sparkly belt buckle to prove it. And has a lot of interest in veterinary science and things like that. And so, through us talking and figuring all that out, there's really only, one of those very selective places that does anything like that, which is Cornell, because they have an agriculture school, they have a really great veterinary sciences program, because they're also partly a public university of New York, including the agriculture school. And so, to me, that's a success story. And in not getting caught up with, as Mason said, not getting caught up with rankings and selectivity and numbers, but really thinking about what is the student really interested in, and what are the colleges that can offer that. And I have to say, that Mason obviously did a lot of research, because if you start out with wanting to play hockey as one of your criteria, the chances that you end up in Texas is pretty low unless you're doing a lot of really detailed research.
All right, so I am getting down to the bare minimum amounts of time, but I got a question for Lily and Mason from our audience members. What are some specific ways that FVS helped you develop the skills necessary to manage your academic workload? And just sort of thinking about also personal and extracurricular activities.
For me, you're kind of, so the schedule for the day was we'd go to our classes, and then we had like a specific sport or activity that was also blocked out for about 2 to 3 hours every day. And so you are doing these things, like you're not just sitting around doing nothing. There's never any time to waste. You are doing things constantly throughout the entire day. And so you have no choice. They gave us no choice but to figure out how to manage that workload, because after school, right, instead of going home like admittedly I might do now and just kick up and watch some TV, I was going to my sport, or I was going to my theater, the theater production. I was going to do something. And so when you have something to do basically at all times, and then you adapt, you have to adapt. And I think that that's another kind of part of what I was saying, is that or what I said earlier, and just kind of how they prepared me, and with my time management, is that I was always doing something. And then when it came time to get my work done, and I had that allotted time to get my work done, I got it done because I had to get it done. Because what am I going to do? I can't do my math homework when I'm rock climbing. I can't do, chemistry when I'm swimming. So it was, I would say, like a very a very positive kind of forced habit.
Lily, I think
I
you've
would
already.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would just, the only thing I would add on is like I think I really learned to utilize all of the free time that I had. It's obviously, you're busy pretty much all the time. Like I leave the house at 8 and I get back at 6 and I'm doing something that whole time. Um, and so I think that uh having that busy schedule helped me be like, okay, because maybe at school I'd be like, okay, well, I could do this later. Like, no, I'm doing it now because I have 2 hours, when I get home, when I eat dinner, and I want to go to bed at a reasonable time. So I think using that time, and then also using free blocks, which I think is sort of an underrated part of like the Fountain Valley experience, is having that free block where you can do anything you want. But I've sort of learned over the years from freshman year, maybe I, just would sit down and look at Instagram for an hour, versus now I think that now I really sort of utilize that time to get done the work that I need to get done. And so using that free time and using the time that you have, I can imagine, will be very helpful in college when I have free time that I need to be using.
Awesome. Well, let me go ahead and thank the three of you, our panelists, Jeff, Lily, Mason, for taking time out of the day to do this. I know that our guests really appreciate sort of hearing the story of how we approach college counseling, how we prepare our students to be ready for college, and I know that they're really cheering on Mason and the work you're doing, and Lily, we're really excited about the journey you're going to be continuing after you leave our campus. Um, to all of the guests, we have put in the chat a link to our college counseling handbook that Mr. Kurtzman mentioned. And I also just want to encourage all of you that if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to the school at admission@fvs.edu. That's admission@fvs.edu. And we'll be happy to direct you to anyone who can answer your question or provide additional information. I think we're only about 7 minutes over our original time, but I think we started about 5 minutes late, so I think we're doing okay. Once again, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you to my guests. Thank you to my panelists. And good night from Colorado Springs and the Fountain Valley campus. Take care all.